Hi guys, this is Elizabeth Quam from Getty Grove, and I am just going to be talking about right now asthma and ozone because I think it's fitting. Because one of the largest concerns are for those that have asthma with ozone gas. Now, that's not ozone water. Ozone water is different than ozone gas. Ozone gas can be more oxidizing and cause irritation and provoke asthma in people, both those with asthma and somewhat of those without. People can usually take quite a bit of ozone gas without any issue. Most people can. Um, Also, I want to say that the ozone gas in the air, when you go outside and you are in the country and you're smelling a good fresh breath of air in the country, yes, there are mold and mycotoxins, spores and bacteria all around you and blah, blah, blah. But there is more ozone in the country than there is in the city. And when you smell it, oh, it feels so good. So I want to just say that some of these studies that have the investigation of, is ozone a pollutant for these people with asthma and with non-asthma, or is it a concern? Yes, like anything in excess is a concern, but I think we're barking up the wrong tree. I'm not the only one that thinks that. I think we're barking up the wrong tree when we're trying to think of ozone as a pollutant. To call it a pollutant, I think is a dramatic fallacy. But anyway, that is it is always important to look at the different possibilities of things and keep an open mind to it. I'm just going to put my daughter here on the screen right now with us. I just love her. She's so sweet. She and my family has dealt with mold toxicity, and the root cause to her allergy of gluten was said to be a mold toxicity. And I my sister has celiac disease, but nothing in her genetics, nothing in her nothing at all would indicate that she has a gluten problem, but like clinically with tests and stuff. But the when a mold gets inside of you and screws with your immune system, you can have all sorts of allergies. And I also was affected and healed quite a lot from, I won't go through all the things that we've healed from, but healed so much from going gluten-free and just that. And I believe, and this is a thought that I believe that it's actually the mold inside of us, a colonization of mold that takes root, and it produces an enzyme that can degrade the gluten, which we cannot digest, but it can digest it. So it sees it, Quam senses this gluten in us, starts telling all of itself to make this toxin, and it's toxic to us. And that's why it's a chameleon of a disease, because it can just throw out all kinds of toxins in different spots. And depending on where you're colonized with mold and how your detox pathways are within yourself would be reasoning why it would create different effects in different people. So that is my theory on gluten sensitivity. I'm putting her there for just a beauty mark. She's my beauty mark for us today. Okay, so I want to introduce you to Christa, Dr. Jill Christa. She is a mold specialist. She wants to be the world's most knowledgeable mold doctor. I think she's in the right avenue, because I think more and more people are going to realize how much mold is affecting health and causing disease. And I just want to give you an elementary start on this, and I think that she is an extremely knowledgeable person that we can glean information from.
Versus mold. I put this picture from my book in here because I felt like it was the most simple way to say spores can only get so far, fragments can get a little deeper, and these are when a spore has dried and died and somebody tries to clean it up on their own without using PPE. And then mycotoxins are ultra small. They're 50 times smaller than the smallest spore. They can go right through the alveoli into our blood system, and that's how people get sick from mold, from the mycotoxin part. So if you look at the respiratory system, what we're talking here versus the mold spore versus the fragment size versus the mycotoxin, our alveoli are about 1 micron or a little less than that. Mycotoxins are 0.1, itty bitty. And that's why we don't really have defenses against it. And it doesn't matter if you're a tough guy or not, everybody's lungs are built the same. Everybody can absorb these mycotoxins. Here are some of the mycotoxins that we can test for at this time, and then the related molds that they come from. This really gives you help when you're looking at testing, like the urine mycotoxin testing, to try to identify where to go searching into the house to find where that mold might be a problem, or into the building. Could be their work, could be their gym.
Here's what's beautiful about so when you're following me on my channel, you'll learn a lot that for one, I'm big on fat soluble vitamins, vitamin K2, D, A, E, and also big on boron, borax, boron, and iodine. And it's fortunate that both boron and iodine can help you detoxify from mold and mycotoxins and arm your body to kill mycotoxins and mold colonies in your body. She doesn't rely on those mostly, but I am really, she has plenty of other ways to help people's immune system that are great. Everyone's different.
Could be their church, could be lots of places, but usually it's where they're going to be spending the majority of their time. So I'm not going to go through each individual one of these. In my doctor course or my training course, I do go through each of the mycotoxins and its affinity for the body. In the case that we're going to be talking about, we'll be talking about 2 of these, and you get the idea of how we can look at specific mycotoxins and start to do some prediction on the body having its hard time. Nature break. Look at that little bee, so cute. Okay, so what are the health impacts of mycotoxins? All mycotoxins are different. Each one has its own, like I said, affinity for the body. Each one has its own.
The gilotoxin in the Aspergillus mold was what was really affecting Nayeli and her brain. So it was really hurting her brain whenever she ate gluten, especially. And I believe that there was, we found some well, we didn't know at the time, but we found in her lung, because we found in her lung, because we had done a x-ray, because we thought that she had swallowed this quarter and maybe it was stuck in her throat because she had gone through this huge thing and the doctor just didn't know what to do, didn't know how to help me, and she had almost like a seizure event, and it was horrific. And they took an x-ray, and at the time it looked like, oh, she's just getting over some kind of virus in her lung. And I was like, well, she wasn't sick. She got, she started having these weird neurological problems. But I'm like, she's not coughing. She doesn't have mucus coming up. She's not spitting up. She's not snotty. She's nothing that would indicate that she has fighting a virus in her lung, especially no coughing. And so we also noticed on her labs that her eosinophils were elevated. The doctor did not mention the eosinophils. And later on, just more recently, I talked to her about this. This was, a couple years ago now. And I talked to her recently about it because we were exploring the mold toxicity and telling her about the mycotoxins and telling her about the mold. And she's like, well, I think maybe you're onto something, because the eosinophils in the body are specific white blood cells for multicellular organisms, typically seen in parasitic infections. And guess what can parasitize the body? Mold. Mold can parasitize the body, and aspergillus um, can look like cancer on a lung X-ray, and it can also look like a virus, like healing from a virus on an X-ray. So those are very specific. Later, I'll show you a picture where they're talking about how sometimes you can see that there's an increase in eosinophils in asthmatic patients. None of us have asthma, but that's what I'm trying to concentrate on here in this video to talk to you about asthma and ozone. Because I don't want you to be not knowledgeable about ozone gas. I've used it in my basement and I think it's wonderful. I love my ozone generator and I do not believe that it is harming us because it denatures very quickly in the air. It's moving on. Let's move on with this.
Biological diversity. So what I tried to do for this is to lump in this first section what all mycotoxins do, the thing that is consistent about all of them. And where one strays, I've noted that. So they are all immunotoxic, neurotoxic, dermatoxic, means to the skin, alimentary canal toxic, so from the mouth to the anus, nephrotoxic, hepatotoxic, hepatocarcinogenic, teratogenic, carcinogenic, and genotoxic. These things can affect bodies at the gene level. That's why we get into so much trouble, because they rewire us to be more wimpy. They rewire our immune systems. They are all lipophilic. This is so important to remember when we start to think about where they can go in the body and how to get them out. They are all inflammatory to the sinuses and the lung tissues.
Lipophilic means fat loving, fat loving, fat loving. So you think of oftentimes people like, oh, starve the mold inside of you because it loves sugar. And yeah, a lot of them like sugar too. Like if you're making if you're growing mushrooms, you're wanting to use like a carbohydrate base because they just love that sugar. But honestly, it really does not. It might starve it and help the other bacteria get more of a hold, but that it truly won't die until you are dead and fully decomposed. But anyway, moving on.
All the respiratory passages, and you can actually get airway remodeling if it's persistent. So if someone is in a building and all the spores and fragments are locked behind building material, the mycotoxins can seep through that building material because they're 50 times smaller. So they sort of gradiently go to the less toxic area, and that can poison the indoor air. And the person exposed to that mycotoxin air can actually have airway remodeling, even if they didn't have exposure to the spore.
Okay, I'm losing some of you, but I wanted to show you some of these symptoms if you think about this.
Sensitized person that also is interacting with the spores and the fragments. But someone can have sinusitis just from mycotoxin exposure. Digestively, we might see food allergies, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, and then it gets more severe into the intestinal epithelial blunting, looking like a celiac patient. Immune, you can see anything going from allergies and frequent colds all the way to cancer. Neurologically, we see a lot of neurological changes with mold mycotoxins. So think about it, makes sense. It's fat soluble. They are fat soluble, and our nervous system and our brain is fat. You know, most of our brain is just a big old fat head. So you can see depression, headache, migraines, all the way to dementia and tremors. An oddity of mold toxin illness is tinnitus or ear ringing. It's very common. And think about it, antibiotics are one of the highest class of drugs to cause tinnitus. Cutaneously, we can see itching, rashes. Okay. Itching is a very particular keynote symptom.
Yeah, and Nayeli had a lot of itching. She had where she'd go around the house and kind of be like just more reactive, more vomitous. Didn't actually vomit often, but like just feeling throw-uppy, and fatigue, especially at first. And then at the beginning, she had like double vision, seemingly. And she was very affected by the brain because they told us that she had leukodystrophy, a demyelinating disorder of the brain, of which she would die within 3 to 5 years. And 40% of those are genetically not known, even though genetic links are often not genetic predispositions can actually be a susceptibility rather than a sentencing. And so I want people to think about it that way. The more we know, the more we know we don't know. The more you dig into research and science, the more you realize sometimes when people are laying down the law, their hypothesis is just one hypothesis of a educated assumption, and an educated assumption is fine to think on and ponder, but when we start making declarative statements, it's really difficult. So she has experienced lots and lots of asthma. In her practice, she sees lots of asthmatic patients, and she's helped a lot of people. And through this time, I have been really, I had learned about iodine after a bit, and iodine after healing a lot without gluten, taking away that major thing, and also just really diving into being really careful about the diet and getting that fat-soluble vitamins in, using a lot of grass-based butter, grass-fed beef, and grass-finished, grass-fed, and doing a lot of that with her diet. But when I started that iodine, that there was still a symptom that she had that was very peculiar, and it was where all of a sudden she'd just be like bite her arm. And I'm like, what's wrong? Where did it hurt? Was there like a ping of pain? Was it an electric shock? I don't know. She would be like, I'm fine. And I'd be like, no, can we explore that? No, she's little. She cannot tell me exactly what is going on. And so when I started her with more regular iodide solution, and internally too, is when she had lots of that arm, especially lots of little what looked like dermatitis herpetiformis come out of her arm. She hadn't had dermatitis herpetiformis before, but when I was living in my house with mold, it looked like I had dermatitis herpetiformis on my skin, and at various times Derek had little spots on his body that seemed like dermatitis herpetiformis, which is often seen in quite a few autoimmune diseases. Okay, so that happened, and she after that, I have never seen, and that was in August of just this last year, and after that I have not seen her bite at her arm at all. No biting at her arm, and she's been healthy and fine. So I just want to be aware of that. But we're not talking about Nayeli totally. We're talking about asthma. But iodine is important in that mix because I believe iodine can be helpful in an asthmatic patient, supplementation with iodine, and because every secretion of the body is helped by iodine and contains some iodine. Every secretion, I mean, inside your body, inside your body cavity, inside your organs, there's liquid and secretions and all this stuff, and our joints, our fluids, our bile flow, our everything, our eyes, our dry eyes and saliva and semen and vaginal fluid, like all of these things contain iodine. Our central nervous, in our brain, we should have iodine flowing in our fluid to be our natural sanitizer. Iodine is antifungal, antibacterial, antimicrobial, and it is supposed to be there in our body. And with iodine, there is, when a lot of studies talk about iodine pushing you into hypothyroid, possibly, and all of these clients I've talked to, I've seen testimonies of many people. They're going into their doctor's office saying they feel fantastic, they feel better than ever. And because they have an elevated TSH and they have no clinical symptoms of hypothyroid, the doctor's like, no, you're going to ruin your thyroid. You're going to ruin your thyroid. Or this is not okay. This is not healthy. I am going to show you, and they feel great. I feel really awesome. My TSH, and I was supplementing and had been supplementing with 100 milligrams of iodine from April till about November, mid-November. I am stopping briefly with my iodine supplementation because I'm getting I'm basically, my body's to a healing point. Multiple things have healed, but my body's to a healing point where it's starting to try to decompose my breast, like take out these toxic breast implants. I don't want it to take out my implants. I'd rather get the surgery done and get my implants taken out like that. So I am waiting, and I'm excited to resume my detox with that, and just getting it all the way to my fat, because that's where, when you get that iodine all the way to your fat, if you guys know about brown fat is wonderful, and it's probably brown not only because of the mitochondria, but I believe the iodine in the fat. Oh, iodine, I love you. I love iodine. Okay, all right. So I want to show you a study. This was a long while ago, 1979. But look at this. So there was these patients with asthma. And I don't know what other ingredients they had in this inhaler, but look, they had iodine-containing expectorants, like to calm down the asthma. And now they use a lot of bromide. Oh God, help us! They use bromide in some of these inhalers, and yes, it will calm them down, their lungs down, but it's not solving the problem. It's actually making it worse, because you're just putting more bromide into your body, and it is displacing the iodine. And we have so much bromide in our body in place of iodine that it is riddling our health with poor health. And fluoride and chlorine, it's all in the same family. They're halogens. We don't want those things in our body. We want iodine in our body. Okay, so these guys, there was they had, when 3 patients had an exacerbation of their asthma when they went with a withdrawal of iodine. But also, I thought it was very interesting that that they had concluded that the treatment with iodine containing expectorants causing hypothyroid is unwise and should be withdrawn, even when the patients praise the beneficial effect of iodine on the asthma per se. So they are praising the beneficial effect of iodine. TSH, they're learning more about this, but TSH is actually it's thyroid stimulating hormone, but it's also telling, it's like dual purpose in the body. It's telling the body, hey, open up, uptake more iodine, uptake more iodine. So like it is hard for someone to think about iodine and then just get scared off by all this like hypothyroid talk. It eventually that TSH comes down back to normal. And then and personally for myself, I don't know if it's because I was taking it for so long before I actually checked, but I had high reverse T3 in my labs before, and now my labs were said to be unremarkable. Wonderful labs, wonderful thyroid labs, and I feel 1,000 times better. Okay, so also, I thought it was interesting that in Puerto Rico there is more prevalence of asthma and allergies as well. And also, Puerto Rico happens to be number one in thyroid cancer. So it's weird because I had so many crazy learning things that came about during this time that with Nayeli, and I thought I wonder about Puerto Rico, because I was seeing the hurricane and I was thinking to myself, they have Western medicine and they have a lot of Western food now. The higher income that you get, even the higher amount of fast food that you eat, and a lot of people are kind of forsaking their more native diets. Anyway, they have there. I just thought about even the Western furniture, sofas and stuff, and the trying to save so many things from the flood, because you already no one likes to lose all their furniture in a hurricane and flooding, and the cleanup of the hurricane and flooding is so important for their health, and I feel like that probably doesn't often happen as much. Here we go. Here's thyroid. And it's interesting because also during this time, I'm trying not to confuse people. I believe iodine is one of our biggest mold fighters in our body. There was this one study, and I want to find it again, that led me to that thought process. But it's not a new thought process. It is very known by many people, and in conventional medicine, it is not in practice yet. And there's a lot of people that are even in alternative practice with functional medicine that actually don't understand iodine very well either. But I have had such great healing with iodine and borax, and the fat-soluble vitamins. Those are my go-tos. So yeah, asthma and allergies are more common in Puerto Rico, and thyroid cancer is extremely prevalent. So we've got mold priming drugs, and we have lots of hurricanes, hot and humid, mold priming, medication. We have all of the Western medicine, all of the Western food. There's tons of McDonald's on every corner there, and there's lots of Americanized food. And we have lots and lots of mold. So, okay. Should I even go back to ozone? Okay, ozone. So this is my pondering for ozone when I'm thinking about ozone pollution. So the ozone in the city, the ozone is less. So there's less ozone in the city on a typical day in the city, there's less ozone. And in the country, there's more ozone. But on a day that there's dense, condensed grime and smog, like when there's fog mixed with a bunch of gross pollution, and that ray of sun comes through that fog, it creates ozone gas. And that ozone connects to these things, and they say that it makes it into more of a, takes the volatile chemical, and they say that it makes it into a more toxic one, they say. And the all-cause mortality increases in the city on those days when the ozone is high because of the sun shining through the smog. It's not really fog because it's polluted, greatly polluted. So my pondering is, if we actually created on the days that we don't, now it's good to try to get emissions lower, the gas and blah, 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 not throw it maybe down their throat, everyone's throats, but like try to lower those things. We need motivational speakers for that, and that type of enthusiasm and procuring of thoughts and ideas of how to lower pollution, but so that this smog doesn't happen. But what if there was more ozone, actually, not less ozone during those days? So what if a city, I feel like a study should be done of this. What if a city produced and pushed out more ozone during the time that it is not having a smog day? And then when the smog day came, that there would be less toxins, because all that time there was more ozone depleting those toxins during all the other days. I feel like that's something really interesting to dig into. And so yeah, if you please comment, like, talk about this video, it helps, share it. Thanks for watching.